Do house prices double every 10 years? It's one of those phrases property marketers love repeating, almost like a law of nature, predictable, inevitable, beyond question. And on the surface, it sounds believable because over long enough periods, property in the UK has often been fairly forgiving. Buying something sensible has often been better than doing nothing. But does that mean house prices literally double every decade? No. And that distinction matters because the moment people start treating a broad long-term tendency like a certainty, they stop investing and start running on hopium. So let's test the claim. If house prices really doubled every 10 years, what would that actually mean? It would mean growth behaves almost like clockwork. Buy a house at one number, wait 10 years, roughly double, wait another 10, double again. Sounds lovely. But is that how real housing markets behave? Not really, because housing markets are not governed by slogans. They are governed by demand, supply, credit, wages, planning, sentiment, timing, affordability, and all the messy things slogans conveniently skip. So the real question is simple. Does the 10-year rule survive contact with a real market? Let's test it. Take Bradford. It comes up constantly in property conversations. Affordable, northern, up and coming, a hidden gem apparently. Fine, if the double every 10-year rule were even roughly reliable, what should that look like? Because once a rule compounds across decades, the numbers get silly quite quickly. In 1995, the average house price in Bradford was around £40,000. According to the slogan, by 2005, it should have been around £80,000. By 2015, around £160,000. By 2025, around £320,000. Now look at what actually happened. By 2007, at the very top of the credit boom, Bradford reached around 130,000. That sounds close to the slogan. It wasn't, because that was the peak of a credit cycle, not a steady trend. Then 2008 happened. By 2013, the average had fallen back to around £100,000. By 2019, it only recovered to around £115,000. By 2025, it was around £170,000. So across roughly 30 years, Bradford prices went from around £40,000 to around £170,000. That is a respectable rise, but the slogan implied £320,000, almost twice what the market actually delivered. And the actual growth works out at a roughly 5% a year on average before inflation. After inflation, the real return is much closer to flat. That is the honest picture, not because Bradford is uniquely awful, but because markets do not move like neat slogans. They run, they stall, they overshoot, they retrace, they respond to wider conditions. That is how markets behave. So yes, over 30 years, Bradford has seen growth, but nowhere near what the neat little 10-year rule would imply. And that gap between what the slogan promised and what reality delivered is not small. It's the difference between an investor who planned around £320,000 and an investor who ended up with £170,000. That's not a rounding error. That is a life-altering misunderstanding. Someone will say Bradford is just one place. That is true, but Bradford is not the exception. It is the rule with a name attached, because real markets move in cycles, not certainties. Some markets have outperformed the slogan. Most have underperformed it, and almost none have followed it. Some markets have come close, London in certain decades, parts of the southeast during specific cycles. But even those examples work because of specific structural factors the slogan never acknowledged. Not because property mechanically doubles every 10 years. That is why the phrase is dangerous. It takes a messy system and makes it sound mechanically reliable. And once you believe that, you start making lazy decisions. You stop asking what is actually driving the market. You stop asking whether the local economy supports the price. You stop asking whether wage growth, lending conditions, buyer demand, supply constraints, and exit liquidity actually justify the assumption. You just repeat the phrase and wait. So why does the phrase survive? Because it is excellent marketing. Imagine saying this instead. Property often performs reasonably well over long periods, but outcomes vary massively by timing, location, credit conditions, affordability, and asset quality. That is much closer to the truth. It's also useless to anyone selling property. House prices double every 10 years is far more convenient. It's neat, it's memorable, comforting, easy to repeat. And the simpler a slogan is, the easier it becomes to outsource your thinking to it. That is the real danger. Now, somebody will hear all this and swing the other way. So property is not a good investment then? No, that's not the point. Property can still be forgiving. Over long periods, plenty of people who buy sensible assets and hold them well still outperform those who sit on their hands forever. That part is broadly true, but forgiving is not the same as guaranteed. An average long-term usefulness is not the same as inevitable success. Because once people hear property is forgiving, they often smuggle in a much dumber belief underneath it. Therefore, any property in any place bought at any time will work out brilliantly. That is where the nonsense begins. And this is exactly why hotspot investing catches so many people. Top 10 lists, best cities for growth, undervalued areas, future hotspots. Hotspots are often just slogans with a map attached. They take a messy system and dress it up as a confident recommendation. The result looks like analysis. It is just a different slogan, because if all you do is follow hotspot lists, quote the 10-year rule, and hope the market does the heavy lifting, you're not really investing. You are hoping, and a lot of investors are not really investors. They are people who bought property and then hoped. Markets move in cycles, context changes, and strategies that work in one place at one time for one investor can fail badly somewhere else. So stop asking whether a slogan sounds reassuring. Start asking whether the asset, the context, and the structure actually make sense, because the people who do best in property are usually not the ones repeating the nicest slogans. They're the ones asking the better questions than those slogans allow. The slogan said £320,000, the market delivered 170,000. That is the cost of believing a slogan over a system. Most people watching a video like this leave thinking the answer is to be more skeptical. It is not. The answer is to be more structured. Same questions, same order, every property you see. That is what the risk filter is built for. It does not tell you what to believe. It forces you to test the asset before the slogan gets a vote. Link below.